New Orleans woke slow and pretty, like a song taking its time. The air was warm enough to soften tempers, and the river moved like a woman who knew the city would always come back to her. Sapphire stood in her kitchen off Magazine Street, hair wrapped, nails nude, and lethal. A pot of coffee gurgled. Powdered sugar dusted the counter like soft snow. On her iPad, deposition scrolled. On the stove, a skillet hissed, eggs folding into themselves as if obeying. She plated breakfast with the precision she brought to court, slid a kiss across her husband's stubble, and answered a client's call without missing a beat. File before noon, she said, voice velvet over still. And tell opposing counsel if he tries me, just once, his client will be learning employment law the hard way. Order, control, results. That was Sapphire's daytime religion. Across town in Treme, Amethyst unlocked the door to her wellness boutique, the one with floor to ceiling windows, banana leaf wallpaper, and shelves of oils that smell like rain, smoke, and second chances. The bell chimed and customers drifted in. Tourists with curiosity, locals with secrets. Amethyst could feel intention the way other people felt heat. It came off folks like a hum, a steady buzz when the story aligned with truth, a jagged static when they lied. She mixed the custom oil behind the counter, head cocked. You don't need love, she told a woman with hopeful eyes. You need boundaries and a budget. Take the money drawing oil and a journal. The woman blinked, then laughed. Tip jar filled a little more. The city loved Amethyst because she didn't sell illusions. Not before midnight. Emerald sat with a laptop on her knees, a toddler drooling on her shoulder, and an ancestral grimoire open on the coffee table, like a sleeping beast. Cold flickered blue on her screen. Symbols glowed faintly in the margins of old paper. She had a foot in both worlds and a gift neither world fully named. She could bind or break contracts, legal, spiritual, energetic. Agreements bent for her. Doors opened. Locks reconsidered. Don't chew the bookmark, she murmured, prying vellum from tiny fingers and kissing a soft forehead. The child laughed. The house sighed, and the grimoire shivered in its spine as if pleased to be living here. By sunset, the city exhaled the heat it held all day. Brass and 808s braided through the streets. Somewhere, a second line turned a corner, and a woman in white caught the beat like a secret. The sisters answered their group text with three words: midnight, same place. They had husbands, kids, clients, customers. They had polite smiles and high functioning lives, but at night, New Orleans belonged to them. The entrance was disguised as an old freight door behind Amethyst's boutique, rusted and tagged with faded chalk sigils no tourist would notice. At 11:57 p.m., the lock clicked for no visible reason. The door breathed open like a chest loosening after prayer. Sapphire descended first. The heels she wore in court traded for bare feet and a midnight blue robe stitched with tiny silver constellations. Amethyst followed, arms full of herb bundles and beeswax tapers. Emerald came last. A canvas tote with her laptop, three candles, and a wrapped loaf of still warm banh mi. Because magic didn't mean you had to be hungry. The underground room had been a prohibition speakeasy once. Now it was their apothecary. Brick walls wept in summer. Wrought iron chandeliers hung low, dripping wax that hardened in pale pillars. Jars of powders and roots lined the shelves like a library that knew what you'd done and what you need to do to make it right. An altar stood against the far wall. Ancestral water, rum, lilies, a photo of their grandmother in a church hat cocked so sharp it counted as a weapon. In the center sat the midnight book, Emerald's code stitched to an old ledger. Names wrote themselves onto the page in a soft, steady hand. Women seeking justice always knew how to find a door. Sapphire lit a ring of purple candles. The flame rose obediently, bowed to her, and held. Amethyst bracelets sang as she arranged bowls and mortars. The sound like a wind chime made of old promises. Emerald tapped the spine of the book, woke the room with a low hum, and the city's pulse seemed to sink to theirs. 3 tonight, Emerald said, eyes scanning the glowing page. Too light? one heavy. Start with the feathers, not the blade, Sapphire answered. The bell upstairs chimed once. No one at the door. It was just a room remembered it had once been a storefront. Amethyst smiled. Let's make somebody's petty dream come true. The first client arrived, a girl in a Saints hoodie with a picture of her ex and a list of very specific requests. Cheat itch, phone glitch, new woman's edges falling out. The sisters didn't love Petty, but Petty kept the lights on. Amethyst worked glamour like a DJ works a set. A drop of rosemary, a whisper of fig, a prayer that sounded like shade. Sapphire bound the harm to inconvenience only. Emerald sealed the terms so clean even a loophole would get lost. This is temporary, Amethyst told the girl, handing her a tiny sachet. Just 10 days. Use it to move on, not to spiral. The girl nodded, eyes wide. Thank you. He gonna learn. He gonna need to moisturize, Sapphire said dryly, and the room laughed. The second client was older, a chef with a soft belly and a soft spot for men who stole recipes and credit. This was different. This was dignity. Sapphire listened, chin in palm. Amethyst watched the hum, steady and true. Emerald drew a contract in invisible ink across the table. The thief's luck in kitchens would fail till he apologized in public. No one got hurt, just a career lesson to learn for him. By the time the third name post, the air had thickened into the beautiful kind of serious. Emerald touched the pages. It was warm. Red mark, she said quietly. They moved closer. Jaleesa, 34, new bruise, old paperwork, a note in the margin. He said if I leave, I'll disappear before I make the end of the block. Sapphire's jaw tightened. Name? Bryson, Emerald read. Probation, 2 violations, a cousin on the police force, and a pistol he shouldn't own. Amethyst closed her eyes. The hum around the name roared. Pain, fear, truth. This one's clean, she whispered. No deceit. Sapphire nodded once. We protect first. Ask questions after. They cleared the table. Sapphire's robe whispered as she moved, the stars on her sleeves catching candlelight. Break his grip, she said, voice low, all verdict. Bind his hands from violence, his feet from stalking, his mouth from lying. Amethyst crushed angelica root, high sop, a pinch of cayenne, singing under her breath. Erica Badu played low from someone's phone, bass like a heartbeat. Emerald traced sigils that smelled faintly of ozone, her fingers leaving trails of light that faded into the wood like commands you could only see if you already believed. Ancestors, Sapphire murmured on the altar. We ask for consequence, not death, a lesson he can't ignore. The candles bowed. The room agreed. Emerald pressed her palm to the table, sealing the contract. No blood, she said, more to herself than to them. Not tonight. They ate the banh mi with their fingers, laughter sticky and soft. The sisters' way of forgiving a hard day just by being in the same room after midnight. New Orleans pressed his cheek to the walls and listened, like a gossip who meant well. Jaleesa arrived alone just before 1. She wore a denim jacket that didn't hide the yellowing bruise beneath her left eye. Hands tucked into sleeves, shoulders forward in that practiced way women make themselves small when men teach them to disappear. Amethyst met her halfway. You safe down here, she said, voice a blanket. Nobody getting to you while we breathing. Jaleesa's mouth trembled once, then steadied. I don't want to die, she said. I don't want to kill him. I just want to stop being a target. Sapphire's anger sat perfectly still. She had learned to keep it trained like a gun you seldom had to fire. Then we'll end the hunt. They worked with care. Sapphire took Jaleesa's statement like a deposition. Every detail, every date, every threat spoken and unsaid. Amethyst anointed Jaleesa's wrist and throat with oil that smelled like pine and copper. The scent of doors closing and locks holding. Emerald drew a circle around her chair, protection you couldn't see but could feel like a hand on your back. For 7 days, Emerald said, he'll feel his own intentions rebound. Every time he reaches for harm, it will meet him. If he chooses peace, the pressure eases. This is a choice spell. It builds a mirror. Jaleesa nodded, eyes bright with something like relief. Thank you. Sapphire pressed a small vial into her palm. This is for your door. 3 drops, clockwise. And this is for your phone. She slid a talisman across the table. Text this number when you get home. We're watching. After she climbed the stairs, the room exhaled. Amethyst leaned against the shelf, eyes closing for a second. Sometimes I wish we could fix every bruise with one good storm. Sapphire capped an ink bottle. Storms pass. Contracts hold. Emerald looked back at the midnight book. New names had begun to write themselves on the next page, thin as whispers. She laid her hand flat, as if to soothe the ledger. It warmed beneath her skin like a heart. They cleaned the table. They reset the room. Upstairs, the city went on flirting with the dark. When they finally emerged into night cool air, the streetlight cut their faces into gold and shadow. The river smell came soft on the wind. Somebody's porch played Solange like a prayer you could dance to. Sapphire locked the door. Amethyst slid her key beneath the brick. Emerald checked the alley with old habits of a woman who knew how to read eyes. Same time tomorrow? Amethyst asked. Sapphire nodded. Emerald's phone buzzed. Jaleesa. Home. Door locked. A second text followed. Just a heart. They walked to their cars in 3 directions, 3 lines in the dark that always curved back to the same circle. Sunday sent church hats down Esplanade and incense up St. Claude. Sapphire sat in the back pew at St. Augustine's like she always did when work turned too heavy. She didn't pray for forgiveness. She asked him for aim. Let my hand be steady, she whispered. Let my heart be clean. A brass line passed outside the open doors and someone laughed. God had always loved this city louder than doctrine can stand. Amethyst burned sage in her shop and cracked the windows. She rearranged her displays like choreography, moved her body until the room's hum woke and purred again. She poured a drop of oil on the ground for the ones who didn't make it home last night. Rest easy, she told the concrete. We're working. Emerald took her kid to the bayou and fed the ducks. She kept one eye on the water and one on her inbox, where the midnight book echoed quietly. No emergencies, just 3 new consultations asking for luck, truth, a little courage. The bayou moved green and patient. In it, she saw a reflection that looked like her grandmother's hand. By afternoon, the sisters texted a rhythm of domestic pictures like proof. Shoe tying, nap drool. The city blinked sunlight off the river like jewelry. Life held. And somewhere across town, a woman with jealousy in her mouth and perfume like envy dialed a number she shouldn't know. A voice on the other end said, You want 'em gone? And the woman said, I want them both ruined. The season shifted a degree. The candles in the underground room, asleep and satisfied, flickered once as if a draft had found a crack. Midnight was always coming. Morning came with a long, soft yawn over New Orleans, sunlight slipping past iron balconies and the scent of beignets lifting like a blessing. But in Sapphire's chest there was a heaviness no coffee could sweeten. She watched trial footage on mute while stirring coffee into 2 mugs. Last night's work should have tasted clean. Jaleesa safe behind a locked door, Bryson's hand bound by a contract he couldn't see. Justice done like stitches, neat, tight, true. Still, something in the air hummed off key. Her phone buzzed. Emerald. Sapphire turned the volume up. A reporter stood outside a mid-city walk-up. Police tape bright and obscene in the Louisiana sun. Local man found dead in apartment. Foul play suspected. The photo they put on screen made Sapphire's breath snag. A familiar face, clean shaven, kind eyed, stared out from the lower third. Not Bryson. Someone else. A name they'd seen in the Midnight Book 3 nights ago. A late edition. Urgent. Stamped with a little red circle that meant danger. Community mentor. The reporter read, voice brisk, eyes bored. A volunteer at a youth shelter. No criminal record. Police said a woman had been harassing him for weeks, impersonating a battered spouse. Sapphire set the mugs down so gently you would have thought they were explosives. Across town at her boutique, Amethyst stopped mid-pour over a shelf of oils. Emerald stood at her bayou window with her laptop open and the old grimoire spread beside it, the air around her going thin. Amethyst's call came through first. Tell me I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing. Emerald's voice was rough, like she'd been running. She glamoured her story, cloaked her intent. I'm looking at the echo logs. Her energy signature bent around our wards. She faked the hum. Sapphire swallowed, eyes on the TV as the anchor moved onto traffic like no one had died. We killed an innocent man? The words fell between them like iron. Amethyst sank to the floor behind her counter, back against the cabinets, eyes bright with that particular kind of panic you only get when consequences catch up. No, she said too fast. No, the magic doesn't miss. We check. We always check. Emerald's fingers flew over her keys. Lines of code and sigils slid across her screen. Old ways and new tech trying to braid truth. She put a glamour on truth itself. I should have seen it. I didn't. Sapphire reached for the remote and turned the TV off. The room seemed bigger without the noise. After a beat, she spoke, steady as a judge reading a verdict she hated. Meet me downstairs. Midnight. Outside, the city went on. Streetcars rattled, brass licked the corners. New Orleans had always held sin and salvation in the same palm, but today the hand shook. The underground room felt colder, as if the bricks had decided to keep their comfort to themselves. Candles made cautious halos. The chandelier's wax tears clung stumbered to iron. Sapphire stood at the table in her midnight robe, hands flat on the wood. Amethyst paced slow circles, bracelets singing a worried little song. Emerald hovered between her laptop and the midnight book, one eye on the code, one eye on the old paper that seemed to breathe. Say it plain, Sapphire said. Emerald lifted her gaze. We were played. She came in layered. Glamour over a false memory over a seated narrative. The ledger took her because I let it. The book trusts me. I trusted the hum. Amethyst stopped pacing. So what do we do now? The question held too much. Fix the magic, undo the death, rewind time, be different women? Sapphire's jaw flexed. Her voice came out soft and dangerous. We find her. We bind her. We make her carry what she gave. Emerald flinched. Our contracts are for protection and balance. We don't do blood. She already drew blood. Sapphire shot back. We can't preach balance and hide from the scale when it tilts ugly. The altar watched, unmoving. Ancestors stare with a love that doesn't flinch when you turn out wrong. Amethyst pressed trembling fingers to her eyelids, as if she could push tears back in with will alone. We've been playing judge and saint. Last night, we were executioners. I can't laugh that off. I won't. Sapphire turned to her, incredulous. So we stop. Let every Jaleesa drown because we're scared to get our hands wet? Don't do that, Amethyst snapped, the silk in her tone ripping. Don't use women like a weapon to keep me in line. I'm saying we take a breath before we burn the city down pretending it's a candle. Emerald said nothing. She reached for the midnight book and spread her palm over the page where the liar's name had been. The paper was cool, blank as a lie told by a practiced mouth. She erased herself. Emerald whispered, There's no trace. Whoever she went to after us, whoever taught her, knows how to clean a ledger. Sapphire's eyes went flint. there's always a trace. Not one I can follow without ripping the book open, Emerald said, and if I rip it, it won't trust me again. Silence stretched, tight as the skin on hot milk. Amethyst drew a slow breath. Maybe this is when we step back. If the magic is louder than our morality, we turn it down. For a while. She met Sapphire's gaze. I'm done. For now. Sapphire looked at her like she'd offered surrender in a war they were born to win. We made a promise to each other, to the women who find this door, and to the men who never deserved a death hex, Amethyst said. The words landed between them like a divided street. Emerald closed the book. The room dimmed a notch, as if relieved. We can pause without abandoning. We can choose to learn what we missed. Sapphire's mouth pressed thin. And when Bryson breaks a door tomorrow? We wrote that contract tight, Emerald answered. Choice spell. Mirrors everywhere he looks. He hurts her, it hurts him. Unless he doesn't mind pain, Sapphire said, almost to herself. No one answered. They blew out the candles. The smoke curled up like a question with no good answer. When the lock clicked at the top of the stairs, it echoed down the brick like a little funeral. Days stretched, elastic and unkind. Sapphire moved through court in a suit the color of a storm cloud, winning with a precision that frightened her. Every victory tasted like a thing she didn't deserve. At stoplights, she caught herself staring at her hands and wondering when they'd learn to be weapons. Amethyst turned the sign in her shop window to Spiritual Services Paused and wrote a note that said, Resting the altar, because the truth felt too heavy for public consumption. She sold teas and oils and told women to drink water and make a budget and speak their boundaries out loud. At night, she lay awake and swore she could hear the missing hum in the shop, like a lover who left without taking his cologne. Emerald became a shadow in her own house. She fed the baby, wrote code, studied the old margins for new light. Sometimes she'd catch the grimoire pulsing under her palm like a heartbeat and pull away. Afraid she touched the grief. News moved fast in New Orleans, like gossip with a press pass. A vigil sprang up outside the dead man's building. Candles, flowers, a photo taped to brick in the heat. Teens from the shelter he volunteered at wore shirts with his name, and the second line that rose for him turned grief into something the city could carry without choking. Even sorrow gets a rhythm here. On Tuesday, a stranger came into Amethyst's shop asking for the kind of oil you only sell once you know where someone's soul sleeps. The hum around her was wrong, a feigned softness with a metal core. We're paused, Amethyst said, smiling like a bared blade. The woman left a card anyway, a clean white square with a phone number and no name. The back smelled faintly of burned sugar. Emerald found the card later on the counter and felt the hair on her forearms lift. Don't call it, she told Amethyst, tucking the card under the altar bowl. Let it call us. That night, Sapphire walked past the vigil and didn't stop. She couldn't stand the candles. She couldn't bear the way grief made people honest in public. At the end of the block, she turned and looked anyway. A boy lit a new wick from an old flame. That's how cities keep going, she thought. Theft and inheritance. She put her hands in her pockets so no one would see them shaking. They met again, not because they wanted to, but because New Orleans has a way of arranging coincidences into appointments. A storm threatened, the air going green with promise. Thunder rolled its shoulders far upriver. The underground room smelled like rain before rain. They didn't light the chandelier. They didn't need to see each other to know where the other stood. Sapphire spoke first, voice low and cultured enough to make rage sound like etiquette. We find her. We take her name. We make sure she never buys magic in this city again. Amethyst slid onto the edge of the table and folded her arms across her chest to keep from reaching Sapphire's hand. We make sure we never sell death again. Then who are we? Sapphire asked. The question wasn't rhetorical. It was raw. If we close this door, who are we? Emerald stepped into the space between them, the way you stepped between two waves that don't know they're the same water. The chandelier flickered once. Sapphire looked at the altar. Their grandmother looked back from the photo in her church hat with a mean little smile that said both, "I told you so," and "I'm proud of you anyway." Sapphire sighed long and bone deep, the kind that empties a rib cage. "Fine," she said. "Pause. Learn. But it's a pause, not a surrender." Amethyst nodded. Relief and grief sat down beside each other in her chest like cousins at a repast. Emerald set her palm on the midnight book and whispered, "Rest." The ledger dimmed, letters fading to a dull pulse as if sleeping with one ear open. They climbed the stairs. Sapphire turned the key. Amethyst flipped the shop sign to closed without adding "until further notice," because notice is a luxury. Emerald took the white card from beneath the altar bowl and burned it over the sink. The smoke smelled like carnival, sweet and sinister. Outside, the storm finally broke. New Orleans threw down rain like absolution and warning at once. The street sighed. As they stepped into it, a woman across the street watched from the cover of a cafe awning, umbrella closed at her side, hair dry and perfect in a downpour. When lightning flared, her smile didn't change. She put a crow feather on the cafe table and left it there for the rain to choose. The city swallowed her as easily as a secret. Midnight was coming, and this time it would arrive with something that called itself forgiveness and wore revenge like perfume.